Hi, folks. Jonathan Haddis Edwards here. I'm just back from a very nourishing trip to Italy. It was a pilgrimage of sorts, and yeah, it was a chance to slow down and deepen in and soak up a lot of nourishment and a lot of just wise practices that are just part of the fabric of daily life and of culture over there. I was in Lazio and Abruzzo in central Italy, the mountainous rural parts of central Italy. And yeah, there's just a lot that I'd like to share from the trip. Starting right now with just a really simple practice that's, again, commonplace over there, but we tend to overlook here in the States. So what I have here is a jar of digestive bitters in progress. And, we talk about digestive bitters in Western herbalism, but they just talk about amaro. An amaro in Italian means a bitter, but it's not something that you take necessarily with medicinal intent. It is also that, but it's something that you take for pleasure at the end of a meal. So they've really perfected the art of making these things delicious and desirable. It's what you end a nice, big, relaxed meal with, is a little tiny glass of some sort of amaro. And there's a million and one varieties, which is what makes it so fun. But this is a really classic one. So what you have here is basically white wine that's been fortified with the addition of some alcohol, grain alcohol. And then what you see floating are gentian roots, the roots of Gentiana lutea, yellow gentian, which is a species native to Europe, but almost any gentian species will work. This is kind of the classic one to use. And, the ratios can vary, but I'll give a rough sense. This is about 3 bottles of white wine minus a couple of glasses. And inside there's about 30, just under an ounce of gentian roots, right? So you could say about 10 grams of gentian per 1 bottle of white wine. That's being a bit conservative with the gentian, but in my experience, a little really does go a long way with this herb. Again, as I mentioned, you do fortify the wine so that it has basically an indefinite shelf life, right? If you just use regular wine, it'll eventually go sour. So I think the ratio is something like 5 parts wine to 1 part alcohol. That's assuming you're using very strong alcohol. If you only have access to something like vodka at 80 or 100 proof, then you'll need to use closer to like 1 to 1, or maybe more like, if you're using 80 proof vodka, you could probably use 2 parts white wine to 1 part vodka, something like that. And once you've got your total volume of liquids, then you can add gentian root at the rate of, say, 10 grams of gentian to every 750 milliliters to 1 liter of alcohol solution. So that's just, again, roughly. And basically, once you've got this stuff steeping, you can taste it every few days because the bitterness from the gentian will keep increasing. And once you say, "Whoa, that's bitter enough for my liking," you can strain it out. At that point, the only other step is to dissolve a little bit of sweetener in that helps balance out the bitterness and make it pleasant to take. Typically, the more bitter you've gotten it, the more sweet you may want to consider adding, but it's partly a matter of preference. I don't prefer my amaros to be too sweet, so I'll probably add a small amount of sugar or another natural sweetener. Don't tend to prefer white sugar, but again, in this case, you're taking in a very small amount, so it's not the end of the world, and certainly the benefits of the gentian can outweigh. This is, as amaros go, this one is really pretty notably bitter from the gentian, but it's quite a pleasant bitterness. Well, at least once you develop a taste for it, once you develop your palate gets used to it. It's a really nice thing to have as the very last part of a meal, because it kind of closes. It's a nice way to close. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. But I encourage everybody to play around with making your own bitters. It's a really worthwhile, healthful practice. It's really fun. They make great gifts. It's a great way to end a big meal and make sure that your belly's going to be happy going into the night.